so wrong.
So how long has it been since you got it?
Welcome everyone to the Old First Church here in Bennington, Vermont. Not a happy occasion, but an occasion to gather together to remember the life of a remarkable man, a public servant, a friend, a father, so much to this town and to this state. And so we are gathered in gratitude for the life of Dick Sears, and I am happy that you are all here and that Dick has arranged for some sunshine. It's probably an extra budget appropriation for him, but he saw to it, so we're appreciative of that. We have a number of dignitaries with us today, but also a good segment of the Vermont State Senate. And so in honor of that, we have a song to sing, and I would invite you all to look and find that song that says "These Green Mountains," which is sung by the Vermont State Senate. And I'll ask you all, in ways of welcoming them and remembering Dick, to sing it all together. Please be seated. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper, the Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth, and even forevermore. Welcome to this place of prayer and spiritual comfort. We come today with sadness, but too with thanks for the life, work, and love of Dick Sears. He was of this place by choice, and by choice added greatly to its being what it is, this town, this county, and this state. So now, in the moments ahead, we shall gather to remember, commend, give thanks, shed a tear, and recover joy, the full heart of life. And so let us, in these minutes, keep Dick's memory strong.
Good afternoon. It's an honor to welcome all of you to the Old First Church to celebrate the life of our dear friend and colleague, Dick Sears. Everyone involved in organizing this service worked to highlight Dick's love of country, state, the state senate, and his deep commitment to public service. Dick was one of the great policymakers and strategists of the legislature. Talents which allowed him, to quote Senator Phil Baruth, to leave a legacy that is all but incalculable and one that is an example to us all. This legacy could not have been more apparent than on the day he died. I noticed his nurse wearing a pin celebrating gay pride. And I told him how the man he was treating was instrumental in passing civil unions. The young man smiled and right away grasped the historic significance of what Dick had done for him and so many others. He said, "So he is one of the heroes whose shoulders we stand on." Dick loved the Senate. He loved the ability it gave him to change lives like that of his nurse, his constituents, and countless others. Dick loved the work of compromise, the work of finding solutions to problems that were facing Vermonters. And Dick was funny. One of my favorite memories soon after arriving in the Senate with him was when his friend and former Senator Claire Eyre didn't quite want to give the Vermont Veterans Home all the funds they wanted. So he had us put forward an amendment that would shut down her local hospital. He loved joking. He loved joking about which one of us was in the banner, on which page. He loved when we skipped any kind of Senate Democratic meeting together in order to go home and watch Hogan's Heroes and eat takeout. He loved, as my partner Eric, he loved to ask my partner Eric every election when I was planning to hold a press conference to concede that he had come in first and I had come in second. It's funny, Dick loved campaigning. He loved campaign merchandise, election announcement parties, election night celebration, and he loved PAC money. I remember distinctly our first campaign together when everyone was announcing they would not take PAC money under no circumstances. To my astonishment, we were at a meeting where he stood up and announced that our entire campaign would be funded by PAC money. But Dick didn't love everything. As many of us here know, Dick always didn't see eye to eye with the House. But of course, he did like and admire many of its members, certainly all that are here gathered today. For those of you who don't spend every day in Montpelier, Dick's relationship with the other body could be strained, and sometimes so strained that I spent countless evenings sitting on the couch hearing how the House should be reduced by half, or eliminated, or how certain members should be redistricted to neighboring states or provinces. But he would always laugh and remind me that he would have ended up as a House member had it not been for former Speaker of the House Ralph Wright representing his district at the time when he was ready to run for the legislature. You couldn't ask for a better district mate, mentor, or friend. Like some of the best relationships, ours started out a little rough. Neither of us were sure of the other, but relationships and friendships matter not only in the State House, but in life. And I will always treasure our friendship. Hayden Dubois, a friend of Dick's and mine, wrote in the Manchester Journal today that when Senator Aiken passed, one of his former colleagues in the Senate described him as neither a hawk nor a dove, but as a very wise owl. Hayden went on to say how that descriptor could just as easily applied to Dick, whose wisdom and leadership were legendary under the Golden Dome. Dick's last couple of weeks were not easy for him, but he never complained. He pushed through. Talked about the upcoming campaign. There were good moments even up to the end. He loved hearing the local gossip, full of happiness and pride when we let him know that his bills that he sponsored were passed and signed into law. He was elated when his son John was with him and talked about Dick's granddaughters, and they reminisced about Dick's late wife, Beverly. At the very end, he was still Dick Sears. I got to hear that great Boston accent one more time when I whispered to him that Timmy Corcoran sends his love. And he responded, "Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful." Yes, he was Dick Sears until the end, and now there will never be another one. But we're all so lucky to have him in our lives when we did. Thank you. I would now like to invite up Senator Jane Kitchell. Senator Jane Kitchell came to the Vermont Senate after a long career working in state government, implementing policies to help the most vulnerable. Dick and Jane, as they were sometimes known, had a close friendship, and today Jane is here to say a few words about her dear friend.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. This gives me a whole new perspective from up here. I'd like to begin by reading from Ecclesiastes, and as Brian has just talked about wisdom, and the chapter 7 really talks about the human conditions, whether we're talking about wisdom, adversity, limitations, vanity, joy, sorrow, and mortality. And I'm going to read chapter 7, verses through 12 or 13. A good name is better than a precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For this is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of countenance the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It is better for a man to hear the rebuke of the wise than to hear the song of fools. For as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of fools. This is also vanity. Surely oppression makes the wise man foolish, and a bribe corrupts the mind. Better is the beginning of a thing than its beginning, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not quick to anger, for anger lodges in the bosom of fools. Say not, why were those former days better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, an advantage to those who see the sun. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom preserves life of him who has it. Consider the work of God, who can make straight what he has made crooked. I had the pleasure of working with Senator Sears for 20 years. He was on the Appropriations Committee when I first came to the Senate, and I'm sure he had some apprehensions about me, but we were able to overcome them, and he became one of my closest colleagues. We spent every afternoon, and for years he sat right to my right. So we had many conversations during those 20 years when he was dealing with the illness of his wife, the loss of his wife, how he loved to take cruises. We heard about all the cruises. And in fact, the last cruise he took was actually to take the ashes of Beverly out and had a burial at sea. And that meant so much to him because it really was reflective of the happiness and the many days and hours they'd spent together. We had a lot of discussion around, are we going to run for re-election? Obviously, we came out with different decisions, but he was weighing it out in terms of his life, what he had done, what he wants to do, And in fact, he even had a cruise planned for this fall, coming back from Europe through the Northern Atlantic. So in the end, I took one road, he took the other. I decided not to run for re-election. He decided that he would opt to do so. So when I sent him a note saying, I'm not going to run again, I've made that decision, he sent me a note. And I've taken the note that he sent to me because it embodies so much of our friendship. And I'm writing a note back to Dick. And this is my message to him, actually using his own words in most of the message. Dearest Dick, the news of your death came like a thief in the night, so unexpected and leaving us so unprepared and disconcerted. You have done such a tremendous job. Sounds funny to say Dick Sears no longer in the Senate in the same sentence. No words can tell you how much I will miss you, from Dick and Jane jumping off countless bridges over the years to raspberry trifles. It has been one of the best friendships ever. Know that I'm here in any way. So bon voyage, dear friend. We will miss you.
Let us stand and sing the song, the hymn, My Country 'Tis of Thee. It is found in the order of service as an insert. And a reading from Scripture in the New Testament, Matthew chapter 5, a section of Jesus' discourse, verses 3 through 9. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Here ends the scripture.
Dick admired Governor Scott greatly and deeply valued their friendship. He told me on multiple occasions how incredibly moved he was by the governor's outreach and support when Dick's wife, Beverly, died. We are all grateful and honored to have Governor Scott with us today to share his thoughts about Senator Sears.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate getting to say a few words in honor of our friend, Dick Sears. Before we start, I want to, for the record, I love the House as much as I love the Senate. When I became a senator in 2001, he was already a seasoned lawmaker, having been there nearly 2 decades. And I quickly learned he was a powerhouse. I remember one instance that proved that point. It was a spirited floor debate in my first term between Senator Sears and Senator Crowley. You could see visibly the proverbial temperature rising along with their voices, and both of their faces were beet red. And I remember thinking, what have I gotten myself into here? So I'm not ashamed to admit, along with the respect I had for Senator Sears, there's a little bit of fear, a little bit of intimidation, especially as a freshman who knew nothing about politics or the Senate. And I think it's fair to say he could be a little gruff, maybe even a little grumpy every now and then. But what I learned is you could get underneath that rough exterior pretty quickly if you just got him talking about golden retrievers. It was his Achilles heel. He absolutely melted when you started talking about it. Fortunately, we both had them and shared a love for them. So no matter what our disagreement was or how tense a situation we had, I knew if I could show him a picture of my golden, we'd be all right. I was threatened to get a golden retriever tie to match his. I think he only owned about 5 ties, by the way, and one of them was that golden retriever tie, and he wore it frequently. So I thought I could use that to my advantage. Now, there was still plenty we didn't agree on, but what I respected about him the most is that even when we disagreed, he would listen. And I mean really listen, not just hear what I had to say. I always came away feeling like he actually considered my perspective, and a lot of the time would work with me as a senator, as lieutenant governor, and then when I became governor, to try to make things better. The important thing about Dick was that he not only earned the respect of his fellow senators and those he worked with, but that he used that leverage to help the people he was there to serve. He was a great champion for Bennington County and never hesitated to remind the rest of us about the forgotten kingdom down here in the southeast part of the state. He always worked to support the locals, fund community needs, and give Bennington a seat at the table. And most of the time, the people of Bennington had multiple seats at the table. It was more like a couch at the table. Just look at what he did when it came to St. Gobain's water contamination. He worked nonstop, both here in Bennington and back in Montpelier, for all those impacted. He truly cared about the well-being of those families, and he was key in making sure they were taken care of. It also tells you a lot when you think about the fact that he was in the State House fighting for his community just a few short weeks ago. struggling with his own health challenges at the age of 81, he was there trying to solve problems and help people. Unfortunately, last month, we also had to say goodbye to Senator Mazza, another longtime legislator who listened to people and always fought for those he represented. As I said at his service, this shouldn't be front page news. These two public servants will leave a huge hole in the Senate, in the State House, in their communities, and across the state. But they set an example for good public service, and it's one we should all work to follow and pass along to others. We will miss them both very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor.
It will not be a surprise to all of us here gathered who know Bennington well, and perhaps not a surprise to those who have traveled further to know that Robert Frost is buried in our churchyard here behind the church, and in fact recited a poem from this very pulpit where we honor Dick Sears today. We've chosen a familiar poem, The Road Not Taken, strange in its poetic sense because it suggests something unrealized, but at the same time the poem turns to tell us that the path is indeed true and good. Interpret it as you will. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both, that morning, equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Let us again stand and sing the hymn insert, Come All You Servants of the Lord.
Dick and Governor Shumlin were the best of friends. Please be seated. It's probably the first time I'll ever have a chance to say that. And, well, the last time. Dick and Governor Shumlin were the best of friends. He would follow Governor Shumlin, I really believe this, into almost any battle. He treasured their time together and shared countless memories in the legislature and out of the legislature. One of which was multiple times they spent together at Fenway Park. And a photo of their trips together to Fenway was with Dick in the hospital. Dick would be so honored that Governor Shumlin is here today to give his eulogy.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Jane. Brian has been an extraordinary support to Dick, and I know Murph and the family is so grateful to everything he's done over the past few days to make this just an extraordinary tribute to Dick. So thank you, Brian. He loved you, and we love you. When Murph and Delilah asked me if I'd say a few words today, I was deeply humbled and honored. I love Dick more than words can say, and I know that most of you did too. It was a big day for Daniel Webster in July of 1840 when 15,000 Vermonters showed up on top of a hillside somewhere out there between Wardsboro and Stratton to hear him speak to the Whig Party's candidate for president, Benjamin Harrison, someone I'm sure you're all familiar with. It was an even bigger day for me when in July of 1992, campaigning for a seat in the Windham County Senate, I met a hot and sweaty Dick Sears at that same spot campaigning for a seat for Bennington County Senate. Bernie Sanders, having completed his first term in Congress, was running for re-election. And we both had the same idea. If 15,000 showed up for Webster, maybe 500 would show up for Bernie, and we could troll for votes. Turns out about 15 Vermonters showed up. In those years, Bernie gave even longer speeches than he does now, if you can believe that. And although the content is mostly unchanged, Sears and I, lamenting the turnout, huddled towards the back and just started talking. With Bernie's voice booming in the background, "That's outrageous," the whole thing. What evolved into one of the closest and most loyal friendships of my life had been spawned. And I drove home hoping beyond hope that we'd both win so that I might have a friend in the Senate. I ended up with the friend of a lifetime. Dick would be so blown away, humbled, and mostly uncomfortable by us all showing up here today to celebrate him. We're testing his aversion to attention and long-windedness, which always stimulated any gruff, grumpy gene he may have beheld occasionally. Deep down, he would be so grateful. He loved Bev, Murph, Delilah, Caden, and every one of us more than most people who touch our lives, mostly because his life from the very beginning was unlikely to turn out this way. And he never forgot that for one single second. He was born into this world to a mountain full of nothing and decided and dedicated his entire life to lifting up other kids born into a mountain full of nothing, the kids that he could have been. The result? He was Vermont's Father Teresa. From what he dubbed, as Phil mentioned, the understated Sears fashion, the Forgotten Kingdom. His beginning defined him. He was born in prison in Concord, Massachusetts, to a mom he never knew. He passed through 3 foster families before being adopted by Richard and Charlotte Sears. His dad was a laborer in an electric clock factory. His mom helped provide him with a loving home. Accepted to UVM in the early 1960s, he partied hard, didn't study much, and flunked out after his sophomore year. Over time, he returned to UVM, got a day job, took night classes, and graduated in 1969, determined to make Vermont his home. He took a job at the St. Albans with the Department of Corrections, counseling young offenders, before helping to found 204 Depot Street, which he spent over 30 years with lots of other great folks, creating one of the best regarded residential programs with dysfunctional families with criminal records. Who's here from 204, from the staff at 204? Bless you. Thank you. Addicted to golf, Dick had been finessing a date with Beverly, the bartender from the Bennington Country Club. After getting her to agree to a date to go on a date, he came down with a nasty case of pneumonia. His doctor gave him two choices, not three, but two. Be admitted to Southern Vermont Hospital or go home with a home health nurse. When Dick called Bev to cancel the date, he described the doctor's options. Bev, who was always in command, told Dick she would come right down and take care of him. She did. She spent the night and never left. They were married for 35 years, no joke. Yeah. Nothing brought Dick and Bev more love and joy than Murph, their charismatic son, who they adopted at 18, but Sears had been mentoring since Murph's arrival at 204 at 15. Sears would glow when you brought up Murph or Delilah or Caden, their loving granddaughters. Is that Sears? It would take a crafty umpire to determine who Sears loved more, his family and friends or the Red Sox. For 3 consecutive seasons, as Brian mentioned, when I had Phil's job, Sears, Murph, Katie, sometimes my girls, we'd head down to Fenway for Vermont Day to throw out the first ball, sit up with the owners in their box, watch the game, and consume more hot dogs and beer than would be recommended by the Surgeon General. One of those times, we were being escorted into Fenway by a convoy of blue-lighted Massachusetts State Harley-Davidsons. I made the mistake of asking Sears who he loved more, the Red Sox or all of us in the Suburban. His response, "Do you want me to answer that?" Vintage Sears. But you all know the answer. Father Teresa. Underneath that gruff bark, he loved the most whoever had most recently been unjustly trodden upon, kicked in the teeth, bullied, beaten, or left behind. For any Yankee fans with the nerve to show up here, I'm not talking about the Red Sox. When Sears and I showed up together in the Vermont Senate in 1992 as freshmen, the Senate had flipped to Republican control, with Barbara Snelling as lieutenant governor. It was humbling. We were powerless. In 1996, in a significant political upset, Democrats regained control of the Senate, and as President Pro Tem, with the support of Senator Dick Mazza, whose loss we're also mourning, I appointed Sears to chair the Judiciary Committee, a position that he held for almost 30 years. The impact of his leadership is immeasurable on our justice system and all Vermonters whose lives are determined by it. We don't have enough time, although I'd like to today, to go into the 617 bills that he sponsored in his career, 128 of which were actually signed into law, and I bet there's not a legislator in the room who's got that track record, including me. Allow me to mention a few, because they define the depth of the loss of the man that we're remembering. Sears had been seeking information about his birth and his birth parents all of his life. One of his first actions as chair of judiciary was a modernization of Vermont's archaic adoption laws. He held hearings across the state with the committee, listened, and led the nation in shifting the power to the adopted child from the birth parent. The old law sealed all adoption records, even to the adoptee, unless the biological parent expressly permitted the reveal of their identity. He flipped it. Today, the parent has to expressly forbid the names from release. Several years later, he led the change to kill the provision that forbids same-sex parents from adopting in Vermont. Almost 16 years ago to the day, when 12-year-old Brooke Bennett from Randolph was horrifically drugged, raped, and strangled to death by her uncle, Dick was wrought to his core. After holding difficult hearings across the state, in 2009, he passed legislation that fundamentally changed the way Vermont addresses sexually based offenses and our sexual abuse response system. In 2008, the Vermont Supreme Court, and I know we have a few members of the judiciary here, the judges and everything are off at some kind of conference today, or I know they would be here, but they had a previous engagement. Sears' timing wasn't perfect, so we'll talk to him about that later. But in 2008, the Vermont Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice Reiber, requested a complete modernization and reorganization of Vermont's judicial branch of government. The Chief Justice asked Senator Sears to lead the way. In 2009, Act 54, the Judicial Restructuring Act, sponsored and crafted by Sears and many others here, modernized Vermont's judicial branch of government to reflect the needs of the 21st century. But it was the invention and passage of civil unions in 2000 that would have never happened without Dick's quiet leadership. The Baker decision was issued in late 1999, and the House spent a few months of the 2000 session, under the first few months of the 2000 session, under the leadership of Speaker Robahowski, courageously passing marriage equality. Remember history here. There was no such thing in America at that time. Vermonters were deeply divided. The Take Back Vermont movement was born, and the House bill was referred to Senate Judiciary. The part of the story that I never felt comfortable telling completely before now was the street-smart, politically attuned, brilliant political mind of Dick Sears, without whom civil unions would have never existed. There's no single voice in my political tenure that I listened to more closely than Sears. I would have never been elected governor without it. During the legislative session, many legislators, including Jane, will remember, Dick would make the long drive back to Bennington on Friday, often grumbling that he got out too late, and fearing that Bev would be livid because he was supposed to take her out for dinner or whatever. Make no mistake about it, he and we lived in fear of pissing off Bev. He would casually calm down over the weekend with some rest, but if he showed up in my office on Tuesday morning, whether I was president pro tem or governor, I knew it was usually because he'd had an epiphany, often with the complicity of Tim Corcoran, and I'd better clear the calendar. It was an icy Tuesday morning in March 2000 when Sears entered my office appearing stressed. I will never forget that conversation. "What's eating you, Searsy?" I asked. We could read each other like books. He responded, you're not going to like this. And that gruff voice of his that I won't try to imitate is harder than Bernie's. But just hear me out. Just hear me out. Okay. If we pass the House bill, if we call it marriage, it's self-defeating. Dean will lose the governorship, and we'll lose the House and the Senate. The Republicans have already said their first act in office will be to repeal this, and the new governor will sign it. It will undermine the efforts for marriage equality for another decade or two, and will be setting civil rights back, not forward. Let Senate Judiciary craft a bill that includes the responsibilities and benefits of marriage, but we have to call it something else. I also distinctly recall my response, but I won't repeat it in this house of the Lord. After I got my composure back, I paused, I looked him in the eye, and this is what I said. And we had this response with me so many times when he had an epiphany. Got it. Because he'd always come in 3 minutes before he's supposed to be on the floor. Got it. Dinner tonight, just the two of us. I need to understand this better, and we can try to flesh it out. It was that moment in Vermont's history, and America, where the seeds for civil unions and subsequently marriage equality were planted. And it was Dick Sears' uncanny political brilliance, agility in reading the street, and defense of the oppressed that sowed it. As the governor mentioned, when it was the people of the forgotten kingdom of Bennington who were being harmed, he would fight for justice with more determination, conviction, and stubborn passion than anyone I've ever worked with. In my third term, when we found PFAS contaminated drinking water in both Bennington and North Bennington, he and Brian, Senator Campion, were on it like starving coyotes on a downed deer. He joined me early on in a tense but critical conversation with the executives from St. Gobain. As governor, I was leading the conversation. This was pre-Zoom, so we were on a speakerphone. And Dick's brow was wrinkling, and that leg was starting to fidget when he got agitated. As I questioned the CEO, I knew what that meant. I shut up, and I said to the CEO, Senator Sears has a few questions. He started in on that poor man with his, I'm kind of slow, I'm over my head, don't quite understand questioning, and I just sat back and listened. When Dick did his I don't get it, I'm slightly demented, please explain act, it was the best and most disarming I've ever seen from any human being. He could get someone to show their entire deck of cards, and they didn't even realize they were doing it. That was part of his brilliance, and that's why I never went into a battle without Sears by my side. Even as he grew older, he was always open to listening, absorbing new facts, and changing his mind. Dick was mostly disengaged from environmental issues, not because he didn't care, but because his priorities were elsewhere. If he felt other people could do it better, he would take their word for it. PFAs changed that for him, not because he was suddenly fascinated by environmental issues, but because he saw firsthand big businesses' indifference to putting hardworking people's lives and health ahead of bigger profits for their pockets. If you think I'm in Pete Shumlin fashion exaggeration or being overly exuberant about my friend, take this from the all the news is fit to print folks at the New York Times. Vermont led once again this session, passing the nation's first bill requiring the world's biggest fossil fuel extractors to pay for some of the damage they've created from climate change. Last week's Times reports, and I quote, Senator Dick Sears of Bennington County, the prime sponsor of the climate bill, died last week at 81, less than a month after steering the measure through the legislature. He felt strongly about making polluters pay for the damage they caused, a point of view from fighting to help constituents whose drinking water had been polluted by a local company's use of forever chemicals known as PFAs. One of his legacies will now be his success in convincing fellow lawmakers that polluters must pay, and the idea that should apply to reckless fossil fuel companies that keep drilling and refining no matter what the stakes. That was Sears. From Concord Prison to this farewell celebration, with all of us assembled here, if we take even a small part of Dick's legacy and apply it to the way that we lead our lives for the rest of the time that we're on this earth, in a time of unprecedented challenges and division, we will leave the state and our planet in a much better place. Thank you for giving us this and so much more, my friend. Our love for you will never die. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for showing up. I'm John Murph, if everybody doesn't know me. This is my oldest daughter, Kaden, and my youngest daughter, Delilah. Dad's grandkids. Real quick, Peter. So, yes, Dad was really hard on St. Gobain, but we had a huge raspberry patch in our house, and he always said that the PFOA must have really helped them blossom because they were delicious. I'm overwhelmed with so many stories. I knew the impact my dad had on so many Vermonters and so many of his colleagues. We were his family, but you guys were just as much of his family. He loved and respected all of you. He would have been lost without that avenue, that outlet. It was an outlet for him to be able to go up to Montpelier and to just be with you guys. So you're just as much a part of us as we are of you, and I appreciate every one of you. Just a quick, I'll do one more story because there's been so much today. But in the hospital, we were getting ready, me and the nurses were getting ready to move Dad to the CCU, which was the ICU in the intensive care unit. And before we did that, I had to use the restroom. And my dad had the speakerphone on his phone and received a phone call as I was in the restroom. And very loudly, this woman says, "Hello, Senator Sears, how are you doing?" And he very quickly, didn't skip a beat, says, "I'm doing fantastic, how are you doing?" And I walked out of that bathroom and I'm thinking to myself, what the hell? We're in the midst of bringing you to the CCU. That was my dad, and he was fighting tooth and nail, and we're gonna miss him greatly. He was my best friend and my mentor. I just thank you everybody for coming. We're gonna do a reception. If you guys walk straight up the hill, if you wanna walk, that's probably really helpful. The sun's still out, thanks Dad. And we're gonna do a reception at the barn up right next to the monument. We got some food and some good snacks and stuff like that. Again, thank you guys all so much from the bottom of our hearts.
The time has come to close, but Dick would remind you all that your work is not done. You will have miles to go before you sleep, but he will be with you in spirit wherever you do good, wherever you care for your neighbor, wherever you change a system. But most important for Dick was the ability to relate one-on-one with another, to feel their pain, to assess their situation, to understand them at that deep heart level, and then with that knowledge, to go forward and fight for what was right and lovely, for what was just and good. That was who he was. Long ago, Calvin Coolidge, kind of odd to put him in the same. If you'll notice on the order of service, Calvin Coolidge is looking over Dick Sears' shoulder. It's not a joke. You can ask Brian about it later on, the relationship. But he's looking in such a way that Calvin's pretty serious, and Dick has got a twinkle in his eye about what he's going to do with the heritage he has received and how he's going to make Vermont his own. And Dick did not, it's noted, his life began in the hardest of ways. I think of the Jesus story of birth in a manger. We always think of that as pretty tough times. Birth in a prison, and even the choice of birth under those circumstances, all kinds of odds that brought him to you, to us, for which we're very thankful. But Coolidge wrote, here in Bennington, after surveying the flood damage, well, not the first big one, but not the last either. I love Vermont because of her hills and valleys, her scenery and invigorating climate, but most of all because of her indomitable people. They're a race of pioneers who almost beggar themselves to serve others. He was not born here, but he was here, and he was the essence of what it is to be here and to be in Vermont. And that choice of that word, indomitable, says Dick Sears. So we remember him, and we give thanks to God for his life. Luke tells a story in the 17th chapter of Jesus healing 10 people. 9 went away, one, a Samaritan, came back to say thanks, to render thanks to Jesus for what had been done. Dick was that person. He took that road. He took the road of serving others. He could have done a million things, but he returned based on what he was given, the gifts he was given in life by his family, by all of you, and he returned the favor. So we celebrate and give thanks today. We brought nothing into this world, and it's certain we can carry nothing out. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. All flesh is grass, and the goodliness thereof is as the flower of the field. The grass withereth, the flower fadeth, but the word of our God shall stand forever. I am the resurrection and the life, saith the Lord. The one that believeth in me, though they were dead, yet shall they live. And whoever believeth in me shall never die. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now unto God's Spirit we commend the spirit of Richard Dick, departed, and we rest him in our heart, earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, in the firm and abiding faith that as he hath borne the image of the earthly, so also he bears the image of the heavenly. We know his life continueth in us, and his works abide upon the earth, and that God's eternal Spirit is our refuge and now his home, and that underneath are the everlasting arms of God's abiding love. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. Let us conclude by singing, O Beautiful for Spacious Skies. God's gracious mercy and protection we commit you. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and bless you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace now and forevermore. Amen.